It's like a mirror, but what's inside of you,
Sure.
It's
Yeah.
important to see yourself, because if not, things will affect you somehow, and things might happen that you don't know where it comes from if you don't work it out. So yeah, I always recommend writing. It doesn't matter if it's a song or not or whatever. I feel like writing helps you put in words what you're feeling, and it helps a lot.
What up? It's Dramos, and this is the recap. Of course, as I do each and every week, breaking down some of the biggest headlines from this last week. And my guest hopping on in just a little bit to help me break down some stories. She is an absolute legend. You know her from the legendary group Calle 13. She is also a Grammy-winning artist. iLe will be hopping on in just a little bit. Before she does, though, let's get into some of the BS from this last week. Now, as the U.S. economy attempts to bounce back from the pandemic, this last week we saw what Yahoo Finance referred to as possibly the most disappointing job report of all time. Some were estimating that in April we were going to see as many as 1 million new jobs in this country, but instead we only saw roughly 266,000 new jobs posted. So yeah, easy to say the estimates were just a little bit off, right? Now, aside from new job creation, we're also hearing stories of companies not being able to find people to fill vacant roles. And this whole conversation we're having has just added fuel to the fire and the ideal that people are choosing to stay unemployed and instead of going back to work are just enjoying the additional $300 a week that they're getting from the federal government on top of their normal unemployment benefits. And this has actually caused at least 21 states at this point to drop the additional $300 bonus that many are enjoying when it comes to the unemployment. And now listen, I don't live in like a fantasy world where I think that everything is all about like, rainbows and sunshine and that everyone follows some sort of honor system and, always does the right thing. Like, I get it. Yeah, there's definitely some people out there who are using these benefits, in order to prolong a lifestyle that involves, I don't know, smoking weed and playing video games all day, as opposed to going back to work and clocking in on the job. But I also find it very hard to believe that this is the mindset that is being adopted by the majority of the people who are, in fact, still collecting unemployment. So if we're not a country of pothead, video game addicted losers, what is the reason for this current state of our job market? Well, ironically, our old buddy, No Neck Mitch McConnell, inadvertently made my argument for me as he tried to lobby for ending these unemployment benefits.
I stood here in February and quoted an expert who said, in an expanding economy that is putting the virus behind it, paying people more in unemployment than they could receive from working is an act of substantial economic self-harm.
Now, big shout out to our buddy No Neck Mitch for that little layup right there, because yes, you're right. The idea that paying people more money to stay home than they would actually be getting at their job, that does sound crazy. Like the idea that I'm getting up every morning, busting my hump at work while the federal government is basically just making it rain on my next door neighbor as if he's a dancer in an Atlanta strip club. Yeah, that does tick me off, right? That is until I start to do the math over here. Now, you see, these benefits that we are speaking of, they aren't that excessive if we're being honest here. If you actually break it down, given a 5-day work week, people are really only being given an extra $60 a day. Yes, people in this country who on average have a medium balance of a little over $5,000 in their collective household bank accounts are risking their future lives for an extra $60 a day because sadly, it's better than what's out there for them right now. Now, you see, for me, this doesn't speak to the majority of people being lazy, but more so, it speaks to a system that allows companies to pay predatory, low paying salaries as the cost of living around this country continues to skyrocket. As an example, allow me to tell you a little story, right? It's the story of two grown men, both with full-time jobs working 40 plus hours a week, coming home each day to a shared 2-bedroom, 1-bathroom apartment where on a daily basis they take turns laying their bare butt cheeks on the same toilet seat. And it's also a place where Taco Tuesday is no longer a celebration, but instead is a battle cry for the collective destruction that is about to happen in the apartment's one and only bathroom as two men with irritable bowel syndrome have to answer for their undying loyalty to sour cream. And you might be saying to yourself, wow, that's like an incredibly vivid war story. And that's because at one point in time, I lived that life. Yes, that's right. One of those butt cheeks in that story belonged to me. And it's a story that I'm sure so many people around this country can relate to. Like, let's dive in even further by taking a place like New York City, for example. Say you have a job at a reputable company like in Amazon, right? A very successful company. In fact, one so successful that your founder and CEO is literally the richest man in the world. They even run, cute little commercials like this talking about how great it is to work there.
The pay at Amazon gave me the means to be able to afford a nice gym. The apartment that I have, I get to live a comfortable life on my own terms. It's been a phenomenal journey for me.
And how much is that great salary that they mentioned? Well, in New York, Amazon associates and driver salaries range from anywhere between $40,000 to $50,000 a year, which on the high end, before taxes, is about $4,000 a month. Seems, a little tough, but I'm sure, the powers that be, they would definitely take that into account and into consideration when they're, doing things to help offset the cost of living, right? Well, I'm glad you asked, because the answer to that lies in the median price for the rent of a, let's say, 2-bedroom apartment in New York City. That's where we can kind of find those answers when it comes to the cost of living. And according to Business Insider, the cost of living in a 2-bedroom apartment in New York, the median cost is roughly around $3,500 a month. So before taxes, you take home around $4,000 a month and then have to shell out $3,500 each and every month for rent. Are you starting to see the problem here? And just for fun, I want to show you an apartment that's actually in that price range, and I want to show you what that looks like here in New York City. This right here is a real apartment that was listed for rent. Actually, can we zoom in on the picture of the kitchen again real quick? Yes, that's right. Your bathtub is actually in the kitchen. So for just $3,100 a month, you can enjoy the convenience of being able to wash your dirty butt cheeks while also simultaneously washing your dirty dishes. So, the optimist in me, guys, glass half full on that one. You can get a lot done and really optimize your time with that setup in that luxury apartment here in New York City. So my point to all this, though, has to be, instead of accusing the American people of being lazy, how about these politicians, they take the time to contemplate that maybe, just maybe, for the first time in many people's lives, they've finally found an alternative to breaking their back, living paycheck to paycheck while the company heads they work for, paying them garbage salaries, are lining their own pockets. And just to drive, my own life thesis home a little bit more when it comes to politicians being incredibly clueless, I quickly want to pull up this graphic that the New York Times made that shows the answers of the people that are running for mayor in New York when they were asked what they thought the median sale price was for a home in Brooklyn. So we could pull that up real quick so everybody can see. I'd like to point out that only one of them got that right, got the answer correct, and that was Andrew Yang with his answer of $900,000, while two of them believed the answer was $100,000 or less. Yes, I know. Another incredibly scary and glaring example of how many of the people claiming that they know how to represent our best interest really have zero idea of what it's actually like here in the real world. And they've clearly never experienced the daily trauma of sitting your bare butt on your own toilet seat only to feel the warmth of the butt cheek that sat there just minutes before you did. Now, with that said, let's bring on my guest this week, maybe to help lighten up the mood just a little bit, at least to mix things up. So my guest, she is a member of the legendary group Calle 13. She's also a Grammy Award-winning artist. Her latest single, No Es Importante, is available everywhere right now. Ile, how we feeling?
I'm good. How are you?
I'm good. Thank you. Listen, it's an honor. I mean, I grew up listening to the music that you and your brothers made, so it's an honor to have you here on the show and get to talk to you for a little bit.
Thank you. Thank you so much.
Of course. So, I mean, listen, I want to get into all that you have going on because your solo career is just taking off and you're doing so much. But if it's cool with you, I also want to touch on a couple of current events, especially, when I get to connect with un Puertorriqueño, I like to kind of get to tap in a little bit to what's going on the island, So if that's cool with you, I want to get your perspective on a few things.
Of course.
All right, cool. So, I mean, let's talk a little bit about overall just like the political climate right now in Puerto Rico, because it feels like for the first time, at least in my lifetime, we're having a real conversation about, either statehood or independence. Like it looks like it actually could happen. There could be some sort of decision or some change made. So I'm curious, from your perspective, I mean, what are you feeling? What are you seeing out there on the island?
Well, it has been a mix of things. I feel more hopeful now because at least I feel that people are reacting more than they used to, like a couple of years ago. I feel like we've been more used to not doing as much, or maybe just getting accustomed to the same group of people that always go out and protest and always do something or send an important message. But now I feel like more people are integrating into the protest. We always want more, we always know that more people of the country can be a part of, but at the same time, we understand that not everybody has the time to go protest. A lot of people work a lot and have situations that make them impossible, to go out on the streets, but at least to be present somehow. And you can feel that in social media and in other things that we've been working out now. And at least that gives me hope that we are doing the first step, that is questioning ourselves, what is going on, because sometimes you feel like nobody cared at all. But now I feel that people are more aware, especially after Hurricane Maria, that we felt like more in our faces that there was something wrong.
Yeah.
So
absolutely.
now we are more aware, and we are at least not trusting as much the governments that we've had so far.
Yeah, I mean, let's kind of dive into that a little bit, because what you'll hear from some of the congressmen here in the States, I should say, is that there was, a vote in November that happened, right? And that the majority voted for statehood, right? But they also failed to kind of, talk about the bigger picture of that, where it really wasn't a widespread vote. And there's also questions about, do people actually understand what it would mean to be a state? You know what I mean? Like how much their daily life would change in Puerto Rico just from taxes and all the different things that come along with being a part of the United States as a state. I mean, so for you, what are, kind of you feeling? I mean, obviously you run with a certain crew, but like, what is the general feeling? Do you kind of think that the majority of people do really want statehood, or do you think that vote was just kind of a misconception to a degree?
Well, I think those votes have not been legitimate because there
Hmm.
have been like moved more towards a political party's perspective and
Right.
not as much as what the whole country actually thinks. And you know
Mhm.
that there has been like a small group of people that have voted, in this that is like a way to make us believe that it is something legitimate, but we all know that it's not.
Right.
But they have like this outdated system that they think that we're gonna keep believing,
Right.
the what they have done all these years. And I love that we're finally seeing that more clearly, because sometimes for me it might be something obvious for me but not for the whole country.
Sure.
But now that we have more information and we have more entities and group of people that have worked hard for us to get that information closer, we feel that we're like more conscious about what's going on. But I feel that we as Puerto Ricans sometimes have this um, I don't know if it's naive, I don't know how to call it, but a
Sure.
feeling of belonging.
Yeah.
And we feel that we belong somewhere else. I don't know why, but at the
Hmm.
same time, we have this very proud feeling and we don't
Right.
want to leave behind that feeling. So it's weird. It's maybe a little ironic. And that's why
Yeah.
we need to know the decisions that we're going to make, to be very conscious about them.
Yeah, I mean, it almost seems like, and it's a little bit different with this younger generation from what I've seen and people I've talked to and friends that I have on the island. But it almost seems like this older generation got fooled into thinking that they couldn't survive without the United States. And it's super interesting. It's kind of what you're talking about, this longing to belong almost. But from what we've seen, I mean, even with Hurricane Maria and how long it took for this money to just finally be released to repair the island, that the United States is never going to view, the Puerto Rican people as equals and as a part of the whole system. I mean, I don't know if I'm talking out of context here, but you're obviously living there, so it's a little bit different.
Yeah, and also Puerto Ricans that have lived their lives in the States, still feel the same way,
Yeah.
like we have to put that in perspective. Like, do Puerto Ricans who live in the States feel completely comfortable, or do
Mm.
they feel like they are worthy somehow, or
Right.
feel more than they should be feeling? Like, I think it's all the same. So that's why we need to think about like how we are actually better off. And
Hmm.
obviously I believe that I do trust in ourselves as much, and I know that we're totally capable of working the country on our own. And I acknowledge that it's very difficult and it's not going to be easy.
Yeah.
It's going to be a very difficult transition. No matter what happens, it's going to be a very hard transition. So we need to be very aware of that, and that's why we are trying to promote this assembly where we are very clear of everything, every risk that we will be taking
Sure.
when making this decision, and not only have this political party idea that it's like a circus.
Yeah, I mean, it's funny because the Democrats here believe that getting Puerto Rico as a state would automatically give them a democratic state. And they don't realize, from what I understand, that Puerto Rico votes left and right all the time. That both sides go back and forth with the Republican, Democrat, and even the independents have a strong, movement going on right now as well on the island.
Yeah, I think it's growing little by little. I think there I feel like for the first time there's a space opening, to other ideologies,
Hmm.
and I think we are really seeking for something different. I think we are really tired of the same two parties that have been administrating everything, and has been a lot of corruption. And I'm not saying that with other parties we're not gonna have the same, but at least, I mean, we nowadays we just don't know what we got to lose. So maybe trying something new so we can see if it's going to be different or not. Like, for me, like, we're just like that. We're just like tired of the
Yeah.
same two parties, and we are seeking for something new. But these two parties still have a lot of power, and a lot of things went on in these 2020 elections that it smelled kind of fishy. So we're not sure what happened there.
Yeah, I did see that. I mean, that's a whole nother thing we could spend, an hour talking about. But I think to kind of talk about that, though, I mean, when it comes to the people being capable of handling themselves and these things, I mean, I always look at music as like an analogy. I mean, to think about the amount of superstars and the impact that Puerto Rico has had on the world globally for being such a tiny little island, it shows the power of the people and the creativity of the people. I mean, even just what Bad Bunny is doing globally right now, what we're seeing, it just shows this whole movement that can happen. I think music is like that perfect analogy, but the reality is it's obvious we can create our own things and create our own world as well that, makes the rest of the world have to kind of take notice as well, I feel like.
Totally. And also in sports,
Yeah.
I don't know if you remember that Team Rubio, when Puerto
Yep.
Ricans, they dyed their hair blonde, and everyone here, it was so impressive. Everyone here was blonde, and it was incredible because in those times you don't talk about political ideologies. Like,
Right.
I bet there was a mix of different ideologies who had all that pride of being Puerto Rican. And for me, that is more towards an independency than a statehood, because it's like we are acknowledging that we don't need to belong anywhere else, that we already belong where we are,
Absolutely. No, that's beautiful. That's so well said. And I want to dive into something else that is like a hot topic right now, especially, unfortunately, one of the crimes that we saw when it came to the boxer from Puerto Rico and his mistress. And it's this topic of femicides, right, in Puerto Rico, and this idea of it being an issue. I mean, can you kind of speak a little bit about that? Because I think it's important that we as a culture, we face head on some of the failures of the previous generations, right, when it comes to teaching us how to be, especially as men, this whole machismo attitude and things like that we've grown up on, that has led to the way that we act in certain ways. So, I mean, especially for you as a woman, I'm sure this hits close to home. Do you mind kind of speaking to that and all that we're seeing?
There's still a lot going on here, like especially with what has gone on recently. Like at the same time, like so a woman got killed. It says that it was from a boxer here from Puerto Rico, but at the same time there was this other woman that she sought for help, and the government denied it. A judge that also was a woman, like, she denied the help that she was seeking, and then her ex-boyfriend like killed her. So that shook a lot the whole country, because it was like the same time and different situations. So we could see like different examples of this whole machismo, and this and this horrifying news, and then suddenly this news suddenly become normal to us, and we are in a way, trying to fight against that normalization of something that is violent and shouldn't be a part of our society. And then suddenly you keep seeking to that root that is patriarchy, and you start to wonder a lot. But I think what I feel that at least I feel that a change happened because people, for some reason, empathized a lot with these two situations. It's crazy because you hear news about this all the time, and then suddenly there comes a specific or a particular news that for some reason shakes you more, like the George Floyd situation. Like a lot of situations like that happen, but suddenly there's something that makes it like more I don't know. I think it's something that is more in our faces, in these situations we could see the mother of that girl crying, in the cameras, and you can feel her pain. And I think it's sad for me that it has to go to those extremes, for us to
even
notice.
Care.
Exactly. But at least it's something, and I feel that for the first time the country finally knows that there is a problem, and there has always been a problem, and media is covering this conversation a little more than before. And for me, it's small steps, but it's important, that we acknowledge that there is a problem and that we know that the government is not protecting us enough as they should. And they seem like they don't care as much as well. So there's a lot of group of people like the Colectiva Feminista from Puerto Rico that work amazingly and have made a lot of protests and gatherings and conversations that we need to listen more. And we're also like trying to work on gender perspective education that has always been, a thing here that we don't understand as much. But I think the important thing is for men to introspect on their men privilege in society, know, and try to wonder, like, some people don't even notice that they have made comments that sound machistas or things like that, because we still live in an ignorant society where we haven't learned enough. But it's very important that it's not only a women's situation, but it's inclusive to all people, because we all as a society and as human beings need to relearn some things about our society.
No, absolutely, 100%. I think you put that perfectly, because there is a male privilege, right? Because when we're growing up, the male is always like the prize child of the family, you know what I mean? And the mother is expected to hold everything together, and while we're allowed to mess up or have a bad day, the mom is still expected to, have the food cooked and have, the house put together and all these different things. And I think that leads men to having this kind of idea that they are superior, and for some going to the extreme of then not feeling like it's wrong to commit violence on a woman because they are, above that woman for whatever reason. That's how they feel because of how they've grown up and how, our society, and especially Latin culture, has made us think in a way.
And God, we see God as a man, and
true, yeah,
it's horrible, then suddenly like men are going to feel, well, if God is a man, like we are gods,
Mm-hmm.
And suddenly it becomes it's horrible, but we need to understand it. And I think that's the biggest struggle for me, because it's not only like you see, oh yeah, that's a problem, you have to think yourself like you are the problem as well, if you don't talk about it, or if you don't wonder if you're part of the problem, so it's a very difficult exercise. It's very psychological as well, but we need to speak about these things a whole lot more.
Absolutely. I mean, and one thing I've always, commended you and your brothers, Calle 13, before it was cool, you guys were always talking about real things that were happening. You were standing out. You're using your art, using your music to speak on behalf of the people on things that were happening. I mean, I'm curious, like, what with you guys growing up was like that led you to have this mindset to be so socially and politically active and wanting to incorporate it in your art at a time when it wasn't necessarily cool?
I think it's a mix of parenting, we all are like brothers and sisters, but we are from different moms and dads, some of us.
Yeah.
But I think we're all related into what is art and what is and how art affects ourselves, and how we can express that in a way where you just share how you perceive society, and it's part of the moment that we're living in as well. Sure. So I think thanks to our parents, we were very aware of that. I don't know if it's responsibility or duty, but it's something that comes from inside, we were taught that way, and I feel very grateful for that, because we're a big family, and we're always talking about things, now what has been going on with feminism and everything. We always talk with our brothers, like me and my sisters, like we all talk with our brothers to have that conversation. We don't we cannot say, oh, our brothers have never done something like that, we don't need to talk about it. Like, sure. No, we need to be aware that we're on the same page and we understand each other with everything that we do, and socially as well, and politically. even if we have our differences, understanding our differences is part of the process as well, with our family members and also with our friends. So I think that it comes from that, being a big family, having a lot of discussions of many topics, and expressing all that we feel through the art that we make.
I love that. I mean, so let's talk about the art that you're currently making, right? So you have the song No Es Importante, right? And this one has a very deep meaning from what I was reading about it, right? So I believe you're quoted as saying it's when you need to make yourself realize that someone has been inhabiting your mind for too long and it's time to let go. That is that's a very deep and personal topic. I mean, let's kind of talk about that a little bit. I mean, obviously it's probably a relationship that made you write this song. So let's kind of tackle that topic a little bit. What kind of was pouring out of your soul that you need to put onto a record?
Well, I'm not so sure. Sometimes you don't understand exactly where the songs come from. Maybe till you let it go and time goes by, and then suddenly you start understanding that more. So I wonder, many things, because it started in a plane, and I don't know, maybe I sometimes wonder if that distance, from when you're in a plane that you don't know what's going to happen, that uncertainty and that calm, you can feel in the clouds, maybe it comes from that maybe a separation anxiety, and then suddenly you start wondering many things at the same time. But yeah, I feel like sometimes we can get accustomed to things, not only relationships, but like physical things or invisible things that we get attached to, and we don't know how to detach. And it's important, I think, for us to not, like, if we know that it's something that we don't need, or it's something that is toxic for us for some reason, I think it's important to notice it and to work it out somehow, because it can get worse, and I feel that detaching is also healing. It can be healing.
Yeah.
So yeah, it comes from that, like from when you a little, like, it's called no es importante, and that means it's not important, because sometimes, like, I don't know you, but I tend to diminish my emotions a little, and I feel like they're not important, but they are. So it's contradictory. I don't know. Contradictory.
Contradictory. Yeah, absolutely. But yeah, it's true, because it's easy to brush off our own feelings, you know what I mean? And even when you're talking about, like, losing yourself in something, not necessarily just a relationship, but it could be a job, right? Where you begin to get so invested in it, you start losing parts of yourself, kind of, right? And yeah, I think it is, and it's hard not to lose yourself in those things, though, right? Because when they become a part of your everyday life, it becomes so normal and becomes so much of who you are, to a degree, right? That's like the difficult part about it.
Totally. It's like, we need to feel that it's okay to talk with ourselves, and take care of each other, like, and have those personal moments. So it's good. At the end, it's good, even though it's painful and it's sad and it's difficult and it's scary. At the end, I feel that it's for the best for you.
Yeah. No, I mean, I've gotten into meditation for years, but I've also journaling now, and I've found, like, journaling, it sounds so corny to me. I hate even using the word journaling, right? But I find that when I do it, I feel better, because I'm like, I just start writing, and next thing you know, when I'm done, I'm like, man, I didn't even realize I was feeling that, or I didn't realize I was feeling that much about this particular thing. It's fascinating how much we, like, don't really know ourselves, because we're just moving so fast throughout life all the time.
Yeah, it's like a mirror, but what inside of you,
Sure.
It's important to see yourself, because if not, things will affect you somehow, and things might happen that you don't know where it comes from if you don't work it out. So yeah, I always recommend writing. It doesn't matter if it's a song or not or whatever. I feel like writing helps you put in words what you're feeling, and it helps a lot.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Well, speaking of, I mean, I know, what are you working on now? We get you out of here, but you're working on an album, I heard, right?
I am.
It's a lot of pressure, though, right? Because the last one was what, nominated for a Grammy? The last one, or won the Grammy?
No, the first one won the Grammy. The second one was nominated.
Man.
And the third one, at least one of the songs won a Latin Grammy. So,
Yeah.
but at least that. But I don't know. I'm working on it. But I'm being I always like to be very careful with what I'm working on. So it is a lot of pressure, and I'm working every day. But at the same time, like, I try to say to myself, like, it just has to be like I want it to be. Like, I cannot be in a hurry and do something that I don't like. So
Sure.
that's my goal, enjoy the process, even if it's, ajetreado or whatever. But yeah, I'm having fun now. Like 2020 was intense, we all know. And with elections at the same time, there were a lot of things in my mind, but now there still are many things in my mind, but now I'm working on it differently. And the album process is helping me a lot.
I love it. Well, listen, Hila, it's been a pleasure getting to meet you and have a conversation with you. I love what you're doing. Just keep on doing it. I love that you're being such a voice, and using your art as a means to do so and setting such a good example. So please keep doing what you're doing.
Thank you so much. It has been a pleasure.
Absolutely. Okay, take care. Man, big thank you to my guest this week, Hila, just an absolute legend. Excited to hear all that she continues to come up with and this new album that inevitably will be on the way. So big shout out to her. Thank you so much for hopping on today's show. And before we get out of here, of course, I want to end on some positivity, as we always do, in the form of a positive quote. And that quote comes to us from Richard Branson. And the quote is, "Train people well enough so they can leave. Treat them well enough so they don't want to." And I just thought that was incredibly important and straight to the point on the conversation I started the show with people feeling like, they don't need to rush back to work and rush back into this predatory job market that really exploits their need to survive. And the only way we're truly going to bounce back and create a better country and a stronger economy is if people start taking their responsibility, those in those corporate positions, to start treating their employees fairly and recognize how expensive it really is to survive and live in this world right now. And I challenge our politicians to do all they can to keep the pressure on these corporate companies, these landlords, these cities, all of the above, to make sure that if cost of living is going up, we have to make sure that means that wages are going up. That's the only way people are going to survive out here in this world, and we're going to create a better country for all of us. Now, with that said, thank y'all so much for tuning into this week's show. Of course, I appreciate each and every one of you guys. Until next week, I'll talk to you soon. Stay safe. Bye.